Friends, it's a great honor and a great pleasure to be here. And thank you very much, Valli, for that wonderful and warm welcome and your introduction, which made me laugh. And I really do remember those early days. And thank you and IUCN in those days for helping me along discover my path. Thank you for that. Welcome, everyone, to the Living Planet Conference. And congratulations to all of us on the 50th anniversary of WWF South Africa. This is a huge, huge achievement for many reasons. I'm here really to talk to you about some of the core issues that drive us to what we do. Valli mentioned that we need the passion of people. And I can say that this passion is what I sensed when I made the decision in, whenever it was, September last year, I think, to apply for the position of WWF International President. In fact, when I got the call from your headhunter, Valli, I didn't know why are they thinking of me? And then I received the documents from the headhunter and I started reading them. And within those documents, as I read, I realized that, yes, there is a logic here. And especially I was struck by one statement which has been signed off as part of the so-called Global Compact by all of the 34 national organizations of WWF. And that statement is something that I found was so powerful and so moving, it literally blew me away. It is part of the mission statement, and it says that we shall mobilize, engage, and inspire hundreds of millions of people in the pursuit of our mission. And I think that belief that we are here, Valli, as you said, to drive and use the passion of people, I think that is wonderful. The reason I say that from my own experience is that I have personally been involved in trying to understand and trying to do what I can as one small individual in this space to address this basic challenge that we understand how valuable our mother is. Nature is also our mother. We understand that, and yet look what we are doing to her. Right? And the reason that is happening is the nature of our economies, and the reason that is happening is somehow our unwillingness to act on what we understand to be a defective economic model. Our politics, our business are unanimous in saying, yes, we have a problem. And yet, action is missing. So we have clearly a huge challenge where behaviors have to change, systems have to change, people have to change, politics have to change, and business has to change. And without all these changes, how are we going to achieve a world in which people live in harmony with nature, which is absolutely fundamental, a statement of our own vision? I feel that the need to recognize the importance of people and not to de-emphasize or, if you like, disrespect the importance of all these other institutions, of government, of business, of civil society, and so on. I think that need to recognize the importance of people power will become ever more important over the next few years. Because seriously, I believe that governments have gone as far as they can. Businesses are not moving because they are more powerful today in today's world than the governments are. And businesses are not moving because the pressure is not on them. Last night at a meeting that you people had organized at JIBS, at the business school, I was talking about this theme. And I hope I was able to explain the importance I attach to the world of business. But even that world is not going to move until people move that world. So the need for engaging people is not just a nice to have, it is actually core to us. It's one part of the four things, Valli, that you mentioned in your introduction, but it's absolutely core to our mission statement. We seriously must engage, inspire, and mobilize those hundreds of millions of people. We have to be ambitious, we have to go big, and we have to be out there. This, my friends, is about activism. Now, when we say activism, there are all kinds of emotions that come into people's minds, all kinds of impressions that come into our minds. Some say, oh, there we go again with this green talk. You know, this is really about development. How can you talk about activism? How can you talk about green? Can't you see poverty? Don't you understand? Yes, I do. I'm from India. There are more poor people in India than anywhere else in the world. I seriously do understand poverty. I've lived with it most of my life. But the solutions to poverty are not to destroy the wealth of the poor. The solutions to poverty is not to deplete and destroy the GDP of the poor, as we called it, as I wrote about it in The World of Teeb, but actually to enhance it. And nature is the GDP of the poor. That's something that we need to communicate, understand, and in simple terms, through people. We need to be able to harness the energy that people bring. We need to use it, and we need to be active, and that is activism. And sometimes I also feel that those who are in the environmental space are less optimistic today than I feel that they ought to be. After all, why would I, as a person with a business to run and board seats in several places, which I have resigned from, by the way, because there are conflicts between having those and WWF. Why would I choose this? Because I think, Valli, that we are in the right place. I think we are, with our 5.4 million members and our 85 different organizations around the world, and the huge networks of partnerships that we already have and will enhance as a result of these practice groups that we have created, stretching our reach outside of WWF, I think we are in a better place to reach those hundreds of millions of people than any other organization on this planet that is working in our space. That is the reason I am so optimistic. But when I come across activists, and I respect them, I find sometimes that they are being defeatist. They're almost saying that, we are here for the good fight. We will fight no matter what happens, and then I know what's coming next. We are going to lose. And then I say, stop, hang on. If you are on the losing team, then I'm in the wrong place, right? Because I don't belong to losing teams. And I challenge them to say, why are you saying this? And I remind them of things 5 years ago and 10 years ago, and explain that today we have a better opportunity to make change happen. Greater awareness, more access, more success stories to talk about. You just mentioned the 11 new locations of black rhino, was a species which was considered at one point on the brink of extinction. Why are we being defeatist? And sometimes I find the wrong reason for being defeatist. I kind of respect that, yes, this is a difficult life. If you've been an environmentalist, if you've been in the field, if you've been a ranger, if you've been fighting poachers, if you've seen your friends die, of course you will feel desperate, and of course you will feel like not willing to live. And I can sense that defeatism. But there is another kind of defeatism which I don't like, which is, oh, but if we solve this problem, what's our job? Trust me, there are jobs after success, just as there are jobs before success. There will be a job to maintain what you've achieved. Huge, because pressures will not disappear. Pressures against the free lunch on nature that has been going on for the last 50 years, 60 years, will not disappear. So it is important for us to succeed, to be activists but not defeatists, so that we can do our next jobs, which is to conserve what we have achieved. Those 11 new locations will need protection before long. Who's going to do that? So we need to look at activism positively and never, ever accept the sort of green label and the kind of, tongue-in-cheek, little whispers around the corner, little niggling doubts that people have, and those little jokes that they will share behind your back. Ignore them. Hear this from me. They don't know what they are talking about. You do. So always go out there with the confidence that if you are taking an approach which is activist, you're doing it, as Valli pointed out, on the basis of solid science, on the basis of understanding that there are markets which will equilibrate demand and supply, on the basis of knowing that there are rules and regulations, and yes, maybe they are not perfect, but you're working on them, and you will have better rules and regulations for the future. Be activist, be engaged, but with these understandings. And don't ever take a sense away from people who are sniggering or laughing or smiling behind your back that somehow they are right and you're wrong, because that is absolutely not the case. You are the winning team. Please remember, if you weren't, I wouldn't be with you. Activism is not easy, and I think we need to rely on everyone who is willing to participate, but especially, in my opinion, the youth. Now, I have a few examples here of youth because I was privileged to be able to give away in my very first annual conference, this was in May, 2 prizes to 2 young ladies who were given the President's Award for just being outstanding achievers on the space of the environment. So I'll talk a bit about them. I also want to briefly mention, because we are talking here in this conference today about water, the kind of problems that we face with water are, of course, perhaps more painfully felt here in South Africa, perhaps most widely understood and best appreciated in a town like Cape Town or a city like Cape Town and in Joburg. But actually, they're global problems. Because I see these, I work a lot with the Yarra Valley Water Company, which is the largest water utility in Australia. They are the water utility of Melbourne City. They've had problems as well. That's a developed country. That's a country which has had serious issues with fresh waters. The Murray-Darling Basin has gone dry at points. The river literally doesn't flow down to the sea. So we are not, yes, we are probably the first ones to experience this in South Africa in a serious way and rise to the challenge and hopefully manage it. But we are not the only ones. And I think this is a global issue, so I'm glad that today WWF and this Living Planet Conference is focusing on this theme during the day. And there are other themes which are connected to this, because connected to the theme of water is the theme of food and agriculture. And equally there, we have massive problems. So I want to give some examples, one example in particular from my country in India, where I think people, again, through a kind of activism, have actually succeeded. And I wish them well, and I'll talk about that. And then finally, I want to talk about another young lady who won the President's Award, who's so young that I think I'll leave it to her to talk about her. I've got a little video. So let me begin with, firstly, with Nina Gwalinga, who was a lady who's 24, a young mother, and she is an indigenous leader. Here you see her wearing her traditional head paint. And she's a leader in the Quechua community in Ecuador. Her challenge was the protection of the Ecuadorian Amazon. And it was being destroyed due to several pressures coming from the mining industry, which was mining upstream. And some of you may find this a familiar theme. And because of the mining upstream, there was significant risk of pollution and actual pollution taking place. And she challenged her government's line on development. So what she says, and I'm quoting her, is that who decides what is development? Who was asked what is development? Her point was that her people need to decide how to live. And if they want to live without river pollution, and if they want to live with forests and without land degradation, then that's a choice they've made which must be respected. It is their land, it is their water. That's the point that she was making. And I found her very inspiring, and as we were leaving, she actually said that, I have a request, and I said, what? And she says, you, that is WWF, should partner more with local NGOs and local people. And I said, well, I'm new, but I thank you for that suggestion. And I think that's something that we should all take away. And I know that you here in WWF, Mornay and colleagues, are doing that, and in fact are raising money for local NGOs and local people. I'm very pleased to hear that. Nina talked about the demand that she has for the legal recognition of what she calls the living forest, the idea that there is a biome which has to be respected as a life form within which their communities live. And she thinks of her strengths as two. She says, it's the spiritual connection with the forest, and it's my son. And I think in that beautiful, simple statement, she captures what it's about. It's about the life of the spirit, and it's about the next generation. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is Nina Gwalinga. I want to now spend a few minutes talking about the world of agriculture. It's not widely recognized how deep the problem of our food is in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we have still 800 million people who go to bed hungry. At the same time, we have more than 2 billion people who, because of our food system and its incentives, are overweight, of whom 600 million are actually clinically obese. Today, we have a problem where the food system uses up 70 to 80 to 90 in some places % of the water supply, even though it doesn't need to, because of the type of agricultural practices that we follow. Today we have a problem where, according to the Global Nutrition Report of 2016, and that's a study done by international scientists, our diets have become the main burden of disease. Today we have a food system which, if you include the deforestation that happens upstream, and if you include the methane emissions from the farm, and if you include the packaging and the waste is actually, if you count waste, is the third biggest emitter after China and America, if it were a country. If you include all that, today's food system accounts for between 47 and 53% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. This is our food system. And when I say, therefore, that the food system is broken, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. It is broken beyond belief in more dimensions than one. But how to fix this? This is the kind of challenge to which this gentleman on the left-hand side and the entire community of villages in Andhra Pradesh, which is a state in India, rose up to meet. Vijay Kumar I'm proud to have him as a friend. He is a retired civil servant. One of his frustrations as the Chief Secretary of Andhra Pradesh was that people were not understanding that they had the wrong food system. He had come to the same conclusions that I had from a totally different perspective. And he felt that there was an available opportunity to change the food system because he could see a few examples of success in India, elsewhere, and so on. But his own department would not listen to him. So he leveraged the network that he had created of housewives and of self-help groups for some other work he had done for women's emancipation and women's progress in his state. He leveraged that to create an alternative to develop food being grown in a different way, a system called zero-budget natural farming. You can probably see it in the slides here, but Andhra Pradesh is a state of 55 million people. It is coastal. It's a large belt. It's about 400 miles long. It's about 50 to 100 miles wide. And it's mainly agricultural lands where two rivers meet, but both rivers are affected by water supply problems, and therefore they have drought. They have had 3 years of drought. So big problems, huge challenges. And these people rose to that challenge by saying, let's go to a new system where we recognize that actually agriculture is not about chemistry, it's about biology. Let us reinstate soil biology. Let us see if we can make use of natural products that we have, literally, waste food, yogurt, cow's urine, cow dung, et cetera, use that, feed it so that bacterial content increases and spray it across. And that's an old technique, apparently, that they had rediscovered. This is an ancient technique which had been there, had been destroyed, and had, as a result, depleted soil biology completely. I described this to the UK Environment Minister, they call the DEFRA Secretary, in the following terms, because he's a man of learning, and he's a writer. So I said to him, Mr. Gove, Michael Gove is his name, Mr. Gove, the way to understand this is to think of Tantalus. He said, Tantalus, why? I said, King Tantalus from the Greek mythology. King Tantalus basically was punished for his pride by the gods by putting him in a swimming pool of wine with grapes growing above him. But when he felt thirsty and stooped down to drink, the wine would go down, the swimming pool would go down. And when he stretched up to reach the grapes would move up, hence tantalizing. Today's plant in today's chemical agricultural system is like King Tantalus. It is living in a soil which is rich with nutrients, but it does not have the microbes, the funguses, the nematodes, and the worms to convert that into soluble chemicals which it can absorb through its root systems. Today's plant is still exuding the 40% of the food that it makes in its leaves into the soil to feed bacteria which have died, funguses which have disappeared, nematodes which are no longer there. Because we've killed them off. We have killed the food delivery mechanism of the plants that we grow to eat. And we call ourselves Homo sapiens. Thinking man. I think Homo stultus would be more appropriate in this case. So these poor people, these farmers, understood this in a fundamental way, and they decided to go with the change. One after the other, Vijay Kumar convened groups of farmers, literally, by making them experiment with these new systems which he had learnt about. And this is a retired civil servant doing this, by the way, one man. Retired civil servant with his old friends from his old civil service days. And gradually, over the last 6-7 years, this movement has grown to 160,000 farmers. They cover 185,000 hectares in farmland, which is growing everything. It's an amazing success story. And the way he grows this is to take master farmers, I'd read about all this and in the notes that he sent me, to take people who've done really well, transplant them bodily to another village, pay them the same amount of money on average that they'd get by leaving their farms. And that's what the funding is. The government provides funding for this. And that's basically the biggest and largest and actually only expenditure, because everything else is available on site. And so at this meeting, which is a photograph I took, at this meeting, my first meeting with his group. Now I've had 4 meetings. And at this location, I was still new into this system, and I was still trying to figure out what's going on. And so I was thinking, like, so where's the master farmer? So I leaned over to Vijay, so where's the master farmer? He smiled, he says, you're talking to her, my friend. The master farmer was that lady wearing a red sari, and she was explaining what she was doing, and she was the expert. She had come from another village. So this is the system that they have introduced on every type of product that they have grown. Examples here are rice and groundnut. You get higher yield on their system as against the system that is used earlier. They don't use chemical pesticides. They use the neem tree and the leaf of the neem tree, and they mulch it, and they convert it into a spray, which is then apparently more effective than some of the chemical pesticides. And they even have small village shops like this one where they sell it amongst each other, because not everyone can have the means of making these locally homemade pesticides, if you like. They have measured the performance of their system using 5-meter by 5-meter plots over the last 4 years. And this is a graph they've drawn on the rice that is grown, 8 different varietals of rice, each one grown using their system, that is the zero-budget natural farming, no costs of pesticides, no costs of fertilizers. The yield is higher in their system than it is in the clinical, the chemical system, the traditional one. If you meet Vijay today and ask him, what is the single reason for his success, he says, it's the people. People rose to the challenge because they were hungry, they were suffering, drought was destroying them, and now none of that is the case because they've managed to create a system which uses mulching, uses natural inputs, gives them higher yield, reduces their costs, and they make more money. And when I ask these people, and I've done this 4 times, is what is the one thing that is most important? The consistent answer is health, sir. It's about our health, it's about the soil's health, and about your health, because you may eat the food that we grow. The farmers understand this, they get this. And to me, the other thing that this whole experiment has achieved, and I wish them success because now it's been taken up by the state as a state strategy, is that it has truly placed women at the center. This lady is also a master farmer. A picture I took, you can see that she's talking and she's been asked to speak to others in a new area where the system isn't working. And you can see that the audience consists almost entirely of men. The radiance, the power, and the joy that she had in communicating her success was just absolutely mind-blowing. I took this picture and I've treasured it because it's something that reminds me of what is possible when people rise to the challenge, when they do what's available to them. Nature comes back when you follow the kind of farming systems. I grew up as a child in India, and there were dragonflies. For the last 25 years of my various visits to India, I haven't seen dragonflies until I went to Andhra Pradesh to their farms, and I had to literally sort of swat them away. It was just crowded with dragonflies. To me, the dragonfly is an amazing indicator of the success of biodiversity, which means not only are we not killing it off, we're actually regenerating it as a result of that. And I think that's an amazing success. So an initiative born of people's interest to solve their own problems, supported by an old civil servant with his understanding of how systems work, and resulting in power for women and the return of nature. An amazing success story. And finally, I want to leave you with another one, which, again, I was privileged to be able to award this young girl, although she and her parents couldn't travel all the way to Cartagena, where we had the ceremony, because they live in Belize. This is Madison Edwards, 12 years old, who, and I will leave it to her to explain in her words what she did, actually began an internet campaign to prevent oil drilling literally next to where she lives, which is the location of a World Heritage Site reef, coral reef. So please hear this in the words of 12-year-old Madison Edwards.
Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to thank the president of WWF and the WWF organization for this special recognition. I'm incredibly honored to be mentioned for my activism at such an important conference for the conservation of our planet. Less than a mile behind me is home to one of the most diverse marine ecosystems found anywhere, the Belize Barrier Reef. It still amazes me to think that one day there were ships so close to my home searching for oil and people willing to risk it all for money. I had never seen dolphins in the wild before, and if these big seismic ships hurt them, I may never get to see them. I was angry and I wanted to help. But hashtag school, hashtag homework, and hashtag my parents were going to the town meeting without me. This was the moment I realized I could use social media to let people know they needed to actually do something. Never underestimate the power of an angry child on the internet yelling at the world, "Leave my dolphins alone!" My town is fierce though. Within hours of the ships being spotted, hundreds came together and caused an uproar, shutting them down. There would be no offshore oil drilling in our waters this time. What about later though? This became such an overwhelming thought for our little nation by the sea. Discussions about it flooded social media, and people demanded a moratorium against offshore oil. I went on my own quest to learn about the Belize Barrier Reef. I snorkeled it north to south on a week-long sailing adventure to learn as much as I could about it. I am by no means an expert on the reef now, but wow, I experienced an entirely different world under there. I finally got to see my dolphins. That was pretty cool. I learned how much we depend on coral reefs, like literally, for oxygen. The reef needed us to fight for it, and thanks to WWF's Saving Our Shared Heritage campaign, this fight became global, and 450,000 emails were sent to our Prime Minister. Of course, I had to write my own letter, and I was fortunate enough to deliver it along with the WWF team. I live where people dream of vacationing, where dolphins, sea turtles, and manatees share their home with us. As Belizeans, we do not take the Belize Barrier Reef for granted. It's why I cannot accept this recognition without mentioning the people of Belize, and especially my San Pedrano Sierra Numberger ski. I am very proud of us, Belize. A special thank you from all of us here in Belize to all the people around the world who shared our story and helped save our World Heritage Site. Together, our voices were louder, and Belize now has a moratorium against offshore oil in place. Big panda hugs to Reese, Miss Nadia, and Elena from WWF for your constant encouragement for my activism. Mom and Dory, without your support, I wouldn't be here. I'd like to encourage other children around the world to stand up for the future of our planet. Your parents and grandparents have enjoyed a beautiful home. You and your children deserve to do the same. Destroying our natural resources for money and power is not okay. To our leaders and grown-ups, you are responsible for the planet we will live on when you're gone. Please make it one you can be proud to leave behind for us. Thank you.
As a 12-year-old activist who says it much better than I ever could. Over to you guys for an excellent day of work on activism and on solutions for water in South Africa. Thank you.